Okay, well, thank you, Wendy, for inviting us to be part of the global gathering. It's an honor to be here in this wonderful group of explorers, experiencers, and enthusiasts. And thank you, Wendy and Victor, for all you have done for the last many years to further communication about the afterlife and mediumship and transveiled communication. We've been receiving your afterlife report thanks to Cheryl's recommendation for some years, and it's been very interesting. So thank you for that. And then I want to thank Plotinus and Hypatia of Alexandria and the collective for having had these conversations with me and sometimes with Gary for the last year and a half or so, and for these communications that have resulted in this new book, The Reluctant Medium, in which we weave together their messages and what was going on in our lives during this whole process. And just to begin with something slightly out of the ordinary, I think they have tasked us with bringing their messages to the world. And very briefly, because we'll talk more about that, but it is that, obviously you all know, but there is life after life. There is continuity of consciousness. There is interconnection across time, space, and multiple dimensions. We are at some level all one. That love is the glue that holds everything together. And they keep repeating that what you do to the other, you do to yourself. And Hypatia specifically says that many times. Mm-hmm. So they also asked, and this is a bit unusual, but they asked that we invite everybody to start this whole conversation that we're sharing this evening with a set intention, that the message comes through clearly, that it spreads far and wide like the fluff of a dandelion being blown, and that we start by figuratively or literally holding hands and imagining that we are in a shared circle of intention. So if you are watching this now or in the future as a recording, if you're comfortable with this, please set that intention and imagine that you are holding hands with all of us, and that we are all listening to this message of hope and support and love that is coming through from the other side. And we give gratitude for this opportunity and thank them for their participation. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So our backstory.
Oof. Okay. Yeah.
You want me to start with the backstory?
Okay.
I came into all of this fairly late in life, in one sense, but I spent my career as a composer of music. And at age 19, I realized that if I was going to write for a symphony orchestra ever, I needed more than myself. So I went out and bought a book that taught me self-hypnosis, and I learned to hypnotize myself. And I found that the musical ideas came through very easily in that state, and I made that my secret technique as a composer. As time went on, I realized that I could do it in my sleep, and I did almost all my composition in my sleep. And I would wake up in the morning and I would know where the piece was going, and I would spend the day writing. And I never asked the obvious question, and that is, where did all those ideas come from? I just accepted it, and it flowed through, and it was no problem. And if it's not broke, don't fix it, I would say. So I come into this area and realized that I had been doing some of this all along, that I had been getting through to the other side all along without knowing it, and without thinking about it. So when I began to do some meditation and all, I found it was familiar territory. It just came natural to me. So that's uh, my backstory. I spent 30 some odd years as a university professor of composition and published X number of works and retired at age 57 and met this lovely lady, and we have been traveling the world ever since.
And that was 31 years ago. So Gary's 88 and I'm 78. And yeah, we've had all these adventures. And the most astounding one is what's been going on in the last couple of years. So um, my my quick backstory is, I mean, I've always been a writer, but I trained as an anthropologist. I have a PhD in anthropology that I studied the Camino de Santiago, this pilgrimage road in that goes across Spain for my dissertation. I walked it in 1982 before it became popular. And but I was raised in a completely humanist, skeptical, materialist family. I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist in a humanist congregation that didn't even have a minister. And so I always had this feeling there was something more, but I didn't have any direct experience of it. And it was every part of my struggle this last year to come out from the closet and be out there with what has been going on is that the way I grew up, this would just be considered all just total baloney and uh, total absurdity. And so I've had a very interesting time uh, shifting my worldview and sort of exploding my paradigm to get beyond my early training. The good part of it is that I am a skeptic and I do want evidence and I do ask questions. And in the book, in The Reluctant Medium, I'm reluctant both about being the medium and also reluctant about being out front about it, as I am right now. Um, but I ask questions. I question what else it could be or how it might be, or give me the evidence. And uh, it's been life-changing. I've realized that with my anthropology training, I sort of have this stance in the world of, well, other people can believe that, and that's fine. I mean, I don't know. I don't condemn it or anything like that, but I always sort of held it at arm's length. And over the years, since Gary and I got together, we've done a lot of things. We've done healing touch and Reiki training and angelic Reiki, and we've studied geomancy. And Gary's a great dowser, and he's written a book on dowsing um, called The Dowsing Mind. And we've gradually, over the last 30 years or so, become much more aware of subtle energies and the reality of all of this. And then finally, Cheryl Page we've been living in Spain since 2009, basically. But we came back to the States in 2020 on a visit to do some research with a Native American shaman about visiting sacred sites the way a Native American shaman would. And we ended up stuck in Cottonwood, Arizona, near Sedona during the election year. And that was quite challenging. Um, but during that time, Cheryl contacted me. She had been led to me by this breadcrumb that was, I don't know if I should call it a breadcrumb, Cheryl, but it was Mary Magdalene and I still remember this contact where she said, well, you may think I'm crazy, but Mary Magdalene suggested I do something about following the Milky Way. And that was the name of my first book that was published by Iowa State University Press in 1987, I think. And it was about walking the Camino. And so she said, following the Milky Way, and that had led her to me, and I might think she was crazy. And I said, no, I mean, in fact, I'm reading about Mary Magdalene right now. So that started our relationship. And then she suggested we might be interested in mediumship, which was the farthest thing from my mind. And, I had gone as far as it all made sense to me about life after life and reincarnation. I read a lot of books about it. It all made logical sense, but it wasn't in any way a lived experience. And I wasn't really interested in being a medium. But Cheryl said, study with Suzanne Giesemann. And I thought, well, okay. And looked up Suzanne Giesemann, and she was a, left brain person who had become right brain. And I went, okay, I could go with this. And so we started taking some of her classes on uh, the Shift Network, and I took a class from Karen Francis McCarthy and David Scheisser about being a healing medium. But I wasn't good at any of this. I mean, I'd go into the sessions, the breakout groups, and people would be having experiences, and I'd go, well, maybe I got something, but I'm not sure. And I didn't want to be a medium, maybe because I was afraid of how that might just blow me out of the water, but I didn't actually want to do it. And so we were going along like this, and it's all fine. And then suddenly I get this visit from.
And I think the thing to do is read the first pages of the book because you describe it there.
Okay. So we had been working on some other book projects that had to do with titles like Adventures of Everyday Mystics. We were going to interview friends of ours, including Cheryl, who we considered to be living sort of everyday modern mystical lives. And we started asking questions about things. And let me see, I'll start here. I'll go to it. Okay. If you had told me that I would be channeling messages from a Greek philosopher who died over 1,700 years ago, I'd have said you were nuts. But that's exactly what spontaneously happened to me with irrefutable evidence, so I knew I wasn't making it up. Gary, my husband, and I had discovered Gypsy, a pleasant cafe bar on the ground floor of the four-star Hotel Palau Fugit in the medieval old town of Girona, Catalonia, Spain, the town we were currently calling home. We made a habit of stopping in, strolling through the atrium, and walking up the 3 short steps to the coffee nook hidden next to the barista station. It's a charming, relaxing area with walls of chunky, beige-colored bedrock interspersed with swaths of white plaster, comfortably padded chairs, low tables, and easy listening music from the 70s. Most people don't know it's there, so we usually had it to ourselves, or so I thought. One day, Gary and I were sitting in our favorite hidden corner of Gypsy, sipping coffee. We were talking about our next book project, tentatively called Adventures of Everyday Mystics. We were discussing such varied topics as the nature of reality, why is there evil, making sense out of awful events, do we come into this life with a destiny plan, why do souls reincarnate, assuming they do, is there life after death, can we communicate with the deceased, the kind of superficial topics everyone discusses over coffee. These last 2 questions weren't really questions, of course, because we'd been studying with Suzanne Giesemann, a retired Navy commander turned evidential medium. Although we'd taken several of her online classes, neither Gary nor I wanted to or planned to become a medium. That was a good thing since we weren't very successful at it. We were just curious and wanted to explore the evidence for life after physical death, contacting spirit guides, if there were any, and so on. The more we studied with Suzanne, the more we looked at the evidence, the more we watched other reputable mediums at work, the more we agreed that life after death, the continuity of consciousness from this realm to another, seemed feasible and made sense. Gary and I were engaged in an intense conversation about these topics when I suddenly felt a voice eagerly wanting to come through me and speak. I felt a light pressure on my right temple, my eyes shifted focus, and I could feel the inside of my mouth changing shape and getting larger. I spontaneously spoke a few words in a deep, slightly accented voice, and then I abruptly stopped. Whoa, I wasn't at all sure I wanted to channel someone. Then I reconsidered and decided, okay, I'll do it. After all, I was being offered an opportunity to channel without having to do a lot of discipline training. I mean, how could I say no to that? I gave a mental nod of permission. My mouth cavity changed shape again, and I spoke in a voice that was not my own. Here's what came through.
We humans are here to experience the full range of experience. That's why we have incarnated. We learn from the bad more than from the good. We are in the process of spiritual evolution, and we need to have the full range of experiences to evolve.
The voice I was channeling was answering some of the very questions we'd been asking. Then the voice stopped and started to withdraw, and I could feel my mouth shift and the pressure release. I had the presence of mind to ask, "Who are you?" And I silently heard the answer, someone with a name beginning with P. The name Plotinus flashed before my eyes, and then he was gone. Gary was watching me wide eyed. That was interesting, he said. I nodded, unable to speak. I took out my iPhone and wrote in my notes app what I could remember this voice saying, which was not much, and what Gary remembered the voice saying, which was all the rest of it. Thank goodness for our cozy coffee nook that it had good Wi-Fi. So shakily, I Googled Plotinus, and there he was. I mean, I knew the name. I knew there was this Greek philosopher, but that is absolutely all I knew about him. So I learned he was a Greek philosopher who lived in the third century. And I skimmed the entry and I discovered that his work focused on the very questions we'd been asking about the nature of evil, about why we live on this world, about unity and oneness as he has a famous expression about the alone with the alone. And I mean, it was like, whoa. I mean, clearly that answered some of the very questions we were asking. Is the universe benign or not interested? Well, clearly not. There were these being there who just came through to answer some of our questions. And we were in absolute shock. I mean, it was a totally unexpected, spontaneous experience that left us both in shock. And we walked out of the coffee nook into what became a different world.
And what I experienced was that we had received a message that wasn't Elyn speaking. It was coming from beyond the veil. It was coming from someplace else. It was absolutely clear to me that we had been visited in this coffee bar.
And the next day we went back. I mean, I guess we were, we were drawn back there. And it happened again. And again, this time I went, oh, no. I said, no. I mean, Gary could see my face shifting. And I just wasn't prepared. And I said, no. And Gary said, how about not now? You know, unless you really want to cut this off, why don't you just try not now? And I went, oh, yeah, that's better. And so I said, not now. And then that proceeded with a whole process of establishing some boundaries and making sure that I felt comfortable with what I was doing and what was coming through. And I didn't feel comfortable being the channel that spoke. It felt invasive unless I gave permission. And so Plotinus was, "Oh, sure, no problem," you know. Um, and that thus began, this was February 28th, a year ago. And I started asking questions. and getting answers. And I started telling friends about this experience very hesitantly at first because I just didn't know what they would think of me. And because these were not the kinds of uh, things I usually talked about with people at all. And they were very supportive and encourage my friends were supportive and encouraging, and they'd have questions they wanted me to ask Plotinus. And then over time, um, there were other people who would Plotinus would bring in, and sometimes because he'd say, "Well, I don't know all the answers. Let me ask somebody else." And so someone else would show up. And so that was the process for the last year and a half. And originally, I spoke to them fairly often and explored the range of answers that I could receive and how they would respond. We have a friend, Nigel, who's a hardcore scientist who's been trying to shift his reality to be more uh, and he's succeeding to be much less materialist. And he had this huge list of questions for them. He was hoping they could show him how to disprove Newtonian physics. But he would come in with lists of questions, and he was much more thorough than I was. But over time, they gave many responses about the nature of the afterlife and uh, good and evil and the purpose of life and uh, music. We asked about conducting, about the
Yes,
source
I
of
finally asked
creativity.
them,
Yeah.
and they said the so-called Gary on this side is observing the so-called Gary on that side composing. And that made a lot of sense to me because that was the way I kind of experienced dream time. So we have been living this book. It's been just the way we have lived for the last year and a half, I think now.
Yeah, about at the end of they kept saying that these messages are not for me. I mean, they're not just talking to me because they want to talk to me. That these messages needed to get out to the world, and we understood that they had
They had chosen
chosen
us.
us because they felt that we would be able to do so. I mean, we're writers. We've written a lot of books. Um,
Just plugged in.
Pardon? Did someone want to say something or no? Okay. Um, and I mean, they've been adamant about that and they started pushing. I mean, I call it the spirit wind at my back. You can feel this pushing that's saying you have to do something. And that started last fall. And so even though I'm really don't like being I mean, I write that in the introduction. I mean, I like to keep below the the barricade. I don't like people to know much about what's going on in my life, and I certainly don't like being out there. And yet they kept saying, you have to get this out there. And so last fall, I uh, wrote an article that was put up on Your Life is a Trip. I write a lot of articles there. It's yourlifeisatrip.com. It's an award-winning travel narrative writing website. And so I wrote about it and I got a lot of positive feedback. And we were also interviewed by Stephen Berkeley on his Life with Ghosts, Let's Chat after Cheryl had introduced us in a class she was giving. And that was like, I mean, I thought, oh, we're really getting out there. So I guess I'd say probably in comparison to many of the people who you interview or who are on your shows that I come here reluctantly, in spite of myself almost, but totally transformed by the experiences that we have been having. Um, so about a year ago, so February 28th, just this last year, this past 6 months,
Yeah.
5 months, I thought, okay, I've had a year of conversations with them, and the time has come. I mean, that was a set way to say, okay, here's a year, and so now I will turn this into a book. And I just knew it needed to be not only their messages to me, but the context in which they came. And that context ultimately included I got really, really sick last year. I had whooping cough. I thought I would die. And problems that Gary and I had with our relationship, and advice I would ask for, and wisdom that they gave. And so it became a very personal relationship with them. Um, and it's it's evolved to, it feels so natural now that I sometimes stop and I think, well, wait a minute, how can this feel so natural? But I guess I've integrated the connection, and I can just sort of go, oh yeah, thank you. We asked them to be here tonight, and they promised that they would help if we ran short of words, or they would help us with the right words to get their messages across. And Gary's become part of this because they've started coming to him, and that's been interesting too.
Sometimes I get, I haven't had much of the experience of channeling with the voices and all, but I will get answers to questions that are not mine. They'll just come through. And actually, not long ago, Elyn was worried about appearing to be crazy by bringing these voices through, and they came.
Oh, now I'm going to start hearing voices out there. It's just going to be all over with.
And they came through me with Plotinus's voice to, I guess, reassure Elyn that at least if we're crazy, we're both crazy.
And it's clearly we're not. It's just these old habits, because if you spend your life in the very materialist, humanist, skeptical, whatever kind of realm, which is where we've basically spent our life. I mean, and I say that, and that's not really true. I mean, we've done the Reiki work and sent distant healing, and Gary's a great dowser, and we sense energies, but somehow to integrate all of that. And even though, I've read books for years about past lives or afterlife, and near-death experiences and all of that, and I believe them. I believe them. But there's, because Carolyn, whom I see is on here, had asked me, why did it take you so long to move from an intellectual concept to belief? And I guess just because I'm still, other people can have experiences and I believe them, but it's not my experience. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And I guess that's why it took so long. I guess I'm a hard nut to crack. Plotinus had to wait this long. He said he's been waiting for some time. So I guess he had to wait this long until I was open enough to be willing to go, yeah.
So we put the book together and
in just a couple of months.
Yeah. Well, you had taken notes on all of the formal material, so that was already written, and you wrote the rest of it in a month or two. And we thought the book was finished. In fact, we had an ending for it.
Yeah.
And then Michael came through. Michael was an old boyfriend of Elyn, who had passed over some 20 years ago. And he was a scholar who had actually written about Plotinus.
but
And
not
he,
when I knew him. I knew him 40 years ago. I mean, we had a very tumultuous relationship when I was at Princeton, and he was a very erudite scholar of Greek philosophy, but he didn't study Plotinus at that point. And we had parted ways in 1985, and I'd never spoken to him again. And I rarely thought about him. And then in late March this year, as I was finishing up the book, I already had the end and stuff. Suddenly, I'm thinking about Michael and our relationship, and I'm going, boy, this is weird. And and then I had this dream, and I write about it in the book where it was a visitation in a dream. I mean, he was there. He was next to me in the dream. And I'm going, but aren't you dead? You know, and well, but I mean, he was there. And I woke up and I was just in shock. And I I went, I thought, well, maybe I'll go to meditation. And uh, our friend Marcin, who's on this video podcast, had suggested maybe I should try talking to him. And I thought, I don't want to talk to him. I mean, we did not have a good relationship. I don't want to talk to him. Um, but I did. And what was then revealed in the conversations that I had with him was that he was part of this group that's called the Collective, that I had never known who one of the people. I knew he had a name, and his name in the collective that I was told was um, Marsilio Ficino, who was an important Renaissance philosopher who was a Neoplatonist. But he never talked to me in all the year that I'd been talking to the collective. He'd never talked to me. And when I'd ask why, Plotinus would say, well, you're not ready yet to know all about this and stuff. So then Michael came through, and I'm talking to him, and I suddenly got that his initials are MF, just like Marsilio Ficino. And I said, Michael, are you Marsilio Ficino? And he said, yeah. And afterwards, when I looked back at everything I'd written, it all fit together. And it was just like, okay, they knew all along. And they're saying, well, you're not ready yet. We're not going to tell you who all these people are. There's a reason he's not talking to you. Um, so yeah, it was.
so we had to write a new ending to the
It's a
book.
new ending to the book that included Michael, because then it was not only Plotinus and Hypatia, whom I should have mentioned at great length, but haven't yet, because she started coming through, and she was a Neoplatonist also. She was like two generations beyond Plotinus, but she's a very important uh, woman. She was slaughtered by a team of a mob of uh, Christian radicals in Alexandria in something like 415, I think. But she had been head of her own academy, which was extremely rare for a woman. But she was an important Neoplatonist. She was an astronomer. She was uh, uh, an important mathematician, more important than her father, who had founded the academy. And she started coming through, and she and Plotinus, when they're talking to me, will often disagree. And she has quite a wonderful attitude. And she will go, well, I beg to differ. And they will have a little discussion about this as they differ in their interpretation of certain things or their advice. So I knew those two. And then there was the collective, of which they were a part, that has different beings in it at different times. And I knew this one named Marsilio Ficino, but it turns out that was Michael, sort of in disguise. And that brought it home in a new, different way, because these guys were living 1700, 1500 years ago. But Michael was living until just 20 years ago when he died, when he drowned off the coast near Delphi.
He actually drowned off the coast of Delphi. And at the end, the last communication that's in the
Yeah.
book, he says, "See you in Delphi."
And I
And
went, what? Well, maybe.
farthest thing from our mind, but 5 days later, or just a few days later, this trip to Delphi showed up that was going to go directly to Delphi and spend several days there. Uh, so we're signed up. We're going to go to Delphi.
And we're going to see what happens. Yeah. I mean, I'm really curious.
Michael's actually buried, or his body is
He's in
buried
Athens.
in Athens. Yes.
Um, so, I mean, I'm still in awe of it all. I'm still
Mm.
occasionally in shock, occasionally in disbelief, and then I kind of get over that and go, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's so different to lead this life now with this ongoing awareness of the presence of the other side. And this may be very normal for many of you on this podcast, but for me, it's completely uh, beyond anything I could have imagined.
Mm.
And it's supportive. It changes my perspective immensely. Um, I feel like I'm more able to integrate things that I've held as ideas that made sense. Like, well, of course. And yeah, I think I've had past lives. I'd had a few momentary, whiffs of past life. Uh, but I somehow, I guess, had managed to keep all this sort of uh, in different boxes. So I could have an experience. I had one that I've written about. It's going to come out in November in a book when we were on the island of Iona in 2010. And I had this astounding sort of visual experience of getting tossed off the side of a hill, which explained why I don't like I don't like certain kinds of heights. And I knew that that was real, but I could still somehow keep that separate from really being in contact with beings from the other side. And for me, it's just been life-changing. And uh, and if it weren't, I wouldn't be here talking to you because I would still be hiding in the corner, not wanting to tell anybody about any of this.